Maria sat at the kitchen table, her tired gaze fixed on Juan's small hand resting on the blanket's fabric. Her son was asleep, exhausted after yet another clandestine physiotherapy session, where time and limited resources consumed more than money. They consumed hope. The silence of the house was interrupted by the insistent buzzing of the cell phone on the counter. Maria hesitated. She knew that number wasn't saved in her contacts, but there was something familiar in the ringtone, a kind of call she couldn't ignore. "Maria? It's Ricardo. Do you remember me?" The hoarse voice, a remnant of the past she had tried to bury. Ricardo, a name that carried memories of days when the future seemed promising, but was now a dark shadow over her present. He was no longer the young dreamer from high school, but a man who ruled the underworld with calculated coldness. The offer came quick and direct, like a trap. A job as an interpreter for illegal negotiations, a chance to earn the money Maria desperately needed for Juan's treatment. As Ricardo spoke, Maria's mind turned to Rafael, her younger cousin, with whom she shared more than family ties. She shared risks. Rafael, impulsive and stubborn, had already become involved in dangerous schemes, driven by a mix of ambition and innocence. Maria knew she needed to protect him, but also understood that his presence complicated everything. The decision was not simple. Accepting Ricardo meant diving into the world of crime, betraying her own principles. Refusing meant condemning Juan to an uncertain fate. Maria swallowed the lump in her throat and said yes, sealing a pact that would forever change their lives. In the following days, Rafael reappeared, bringing news and unease. He spoke of negotiations that could change everything, but also carried the weight of unknown dangers. Maria tried to warn him, but her cousin's determination was unshakable. When he pulled a risky con against Alejandro Vargas, one of the most feared men in that underworld, Maria felt the storm was about to begin. Alejandro was not just a trafficker. He was a force of nature, merciless and calculating. Rafael's betrayal was an open wound, and Alejandro would not forgive. Maria, Rafael, and Juan were now at the center of a chase that mixed revenge, power, and fear. Meanwhile, Detective Sofia Almeida began her own hunt. Determined and tireless, she saw in Maria not just a suspect, but a woman trapped in a web of loyalties and secrets. The police closed in, and the space to breathe shrank. At that moment, Maria realized there was no turning back. The past was coming back in full force, bringing echoes that threatened to destroy everything she loved. Rafael had always believed that fortune favors the bold, or at least those willing to pay the price of boldness. Maria knew that side of him better than anyone. Stubbornness and haste were weapons that could either save or destroy him, and at that moment, it seemed Rafael had chosen to throw himself into the abyss. The con took place on a rainy night in a forgotten warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The negotiation involved a multi-million-dollar fund transfer between rival groups, and Alejandro Vargas, the antagonist who had become Maria's nightmare, was about to lose everything. Rafael saw a golden opportunity, one that to him was worth more than any warning or caution. Maria had been by his side shortly before the meeting, her firm words trying to convince him to step back. "Rafael, you don't understand what's at stake. If you mess with this network, Alejandro will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Please, listen, it's not worth it." But Rafael wouldn't listen. Greed spoke louder, and the con was pulled off. In a quick and precise move, Rafael diverted a large sum of money, leaving Alejandro vulnerable and on the brink of arrest. What no one knew was that part of that money was already meant for Maria, the passport for a safe escape, a new life away from the shadows of disease and crime, a future for Juan that until then seemed unreachable. However, fate was not kind to Alejandro. He escaped prison in a surprising way, returning from the shadows with devastating fury. His thirst for revenge was not only against Rafael, it now included Maria, whom he saw as an accomplice in the betrayal. Alejandro was no ordinary man. His green eyes bore the weight of a history full of violence and loss, and his cold mind plotted a cruel plan to destroy everything related to the con that nearly imprisoned him. Meanwhile, Maria felt the noose tighten. Nights no longer brought rest, and the constant feeling of being watched consumed her. Veiled threats began to appear, anonymous messages, unknown cars following her steps, phone calls ending in silence. At the same time, the police were not far behind. Detective Sofia Almeida, with her sharp gaze and unwavering ethics, led the task force closing in on Maria and Rafael. To Sofia, Maria was a key piece to dismantle the trafficking network plaguing the city. To Maria, Sofia was a constant shadow, a threat that could mean the end of everything. Rafael, for his part, was torn. He knew he had crossed dangerous lines, and his guilt grew each day. He tried to warn Maria that the enemy spared no one, not even those she loved. But the truth was, they were both trapped in an ever-tightening web. One early morning, while rain lashed the city's asphalt, Maria received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end was grave and threatening. "This is just the beginning, Maria. You and your cousin will pay dearly for what you've done. Alejandro is coming." Maria hung up the phone, heart pounding. There was nowhere left to run. Juan slept in the next room, unaware of the storm closing in. And Maria knew she would do anything to protect him, even if it meant facing the hell waiting at her door. The day dawned gray, with heavy clouds seeming to announce what was to come. Maria closed the apartment windows as if she could keep danger out, but she knew it was only symbolic protection. Ricardo appeared that morning with his usual mix of charm and veiled threat. He needed Maria more than ever, and she was the only one capable of translating not only languages, but intentions. The situation was increasingly delicate. Negotiations with Russian and French groups demanded precision, and any mistake could mean ruin. While Maria translated in luxurious meetings, away from the police's watchful eyes, Alejandro approached relentlessly. His hatred for Rafael and Maria fueled a brutal pursuit. He had sent men to watch the cousin and sent coded messages, clear threats that left no doubt. Rafael tried to stay off the radar, but his impulsiveness led him into increasingly dangerous situations. One night, after an argument with Maria about the risks, he disappeared for hours, leaving his cousin anguished and desperate. In this tangled web, Detective Sofia Almeida became the silent shadow moving through alleys, cafes, and offices where Maria and Rafael left traces. She was methodical, patient, knew the underworld's intricacies and human weaknesses. To Sofia, Maria was not just a target, but a woman in danger, a key piece to close a dangerous circle. The cat-and-mouse game intensified. At a clandestine dinner, Maria noticed stairs that shouldn't be there, and a messenger left a note with a veiled threat. "The past doesn't forget. Alejandro is closer than you think." Nights no longer brought peace. Paranoia ate at Maria, who saw in every shadow a possible ambush. Juan needed her strong, but the woman in the mirror felt shattered. Deep down, Rafael fought his own ghosts. The betrayal of Alejandro weighed like a sentence. The fear of revenge and the police mixed with the guilt of putting Maria and Juan at risk. And so the circle tightened like an iron trap, promising to crush those who dared break its rules. Maria knew every step would be decisive. One wrong move, and all would be lost. The rain fell hard that night, blurring the city lights and confusing any distant observer. Maria gripped Juan's hand, wrapped in his blanket, as they walked through silent alleys seeking temporary shelter. The cold was not only weather, it was the feeling of always being hunted by an invisible enemy. Alejandro never rested. His revenge unfolded in silent, methodical steps. He had eyes and ears everywhere, and his influence corrupted the most powerful. A phone rang in a clandestine hideout. "They're weak. Time to finish this." Meanwhile, Maria and Rafael planned a crucial meeting with a foreign contact who could secure Juan and her escape. But insecurity permeated everything. Each move could be a trap. Rafael's restlessness betrayed the anxiety eating him inside. He knew the storm could fall at any moment. Police pressure increased, with Detective Sofia leading precise investigations and tighter seizures. Her conviction that Maria was key to dismantling the criminal empire made her relentless. But in rare moments, she saw in the woman's weary face a human vulnerability that moved her. Night after night, Maria felt the burden of maintaining the facade, the constant fear Alejandro could strike first. In a critical moment, an ambush nearly ended in tragedy. Armed men surrounded Maria and Juan, but Rafael's quick intervention saved them by a hair. This episode left deep marks. Maria saw life's fragility exposed, and the line between survival and death seemed thinner than ever. The brutal dilemma she faced: flee, fight, or sacrifice everything to protect Juan. In this chaotic scenario, unlikely alliances emerged. Maria received unexpected help from an investigative journalist eager to expose the corruption fueling the underworld. This partnership could be a light in the darkness, but it also increased the risks. On the edge of survival, Maria understood the game was no longer just hers and her family's. It was a battle for justice, truth, and above all, her son's life. The following days were a whirlwind of quick decisions and clandestine meetings. Maria knew Alejandro would give no quarter, and the police were closing in with equal relentlessness. The only way out was to create a trap, to deceive the enemy and buy time. Using contacts from the underworld, Maria and Rafael set up a web of false information. Forged passports, simulated escape routes, coded messages. The plan was clear: make Alejandro and his henchmen chase shadows, while she and Juan planned their real escape. But the plan carried enormous risks. One misstep could expose the entire operation and put Maria and Rafael in mortal danger. Psychological pressure mounted, and fatigue took its toll. In a tense night, Maria met with Sofia in an improvised meeting full of mutual distrust. Sofia knew Maria had valuable information, and Maria needed the police for protection. Between veiled threats and fragile pacts, the two women forged a tenuous agreement. Maria would deliver data in exchange for safety for Juan and Rafael. Meanwhile, Alejandro uncovered clues about the trap. His response was immediate and violent. Attacks, interceptions, and a climate of terror imposed on the streets. The game had changed, and the hunt was becoming merciless. But hope lay in that night when Maria, between tears and determination, held Juan in her arms and whispered, "We'll make it. For you, I'll go to the end." The stage was set,
an abandoned warehouse by the river where dark deals were made and betrayals sealed in silence. Maria knew this would be the scene of the decisive confrontation between her, Alejandro, Rafael, and Ricardo. The lights flickered in cold tones as weapons were loaded. Alejandro arrived accompanied by his henchmen, his presence like a storm ready to break. Ricardo, calculating, maintained control, trying to manipulate the game in his favor. Rafael, restless and tense, held Maria's gaze as if begging for courage. Maria, meanwhile, felt the weight of responsibility crushing her shoulders. Juan was hidden safely, protected by loyal allies, but her heart raced, knowing that here, the future of everyone would be decided. The negotiations began tense, with cutting words and implicit threats. The atmosphere was heavy with danger, where any move could be fatal. Alejandro had not forgotten the betrayal. Ricardo played his cards trying to hold power. Rafael sought redemption. Maria fought to save her family, and above all, her son. In a sudden explosion, gunfire erupted. The confrontation turned chaotic. Maria used all her cunning to protect herself and Rafael, while Ricardo tried to escape the siege. Alejandro showed his merciless cruelty, but his obsession was also his weakness. In the end, sacrifices were made. Rafael was seriously injured protecting Maria, who managed to secure Juan's safe escape. Alejandro was captured after a brutal showdown with the police led by Sofia. Ricardo disappeared into the shadows, but his empire began to crumble. The rising sun lit a new morning, but for Maria, the weight of scars was still heavy. Juan was safe, his treatment finally beginning thanks to recovered money and the support of unexpected allies. Rafael, recovering, looked at Maria with a mixture of gratitude and regret. The family, marked by losses and battles, tried to rebuild what had been destroyed. Maria knew life would never be the same again. The price of silence was high, but it gave them a chance to start over. Silently, she promised herself she would fight to turn pain into hope. Sofia, looking toward the horizon, knew that chapter had closed, but the war against crime and corruption would continue. She respected Maria, a woman who faced demons to protect what she loved. In the end, the story was about survival, sacrifice, and rebirth. Ghosts of the past would continue to haunt, but life, stubborn, insisted on blooming from the ashes.